At this hour, the whole planet awaits. Only once every 5 years or so, in the present regime of things, do we have the same date of Easter as our Eastern brethren. It is thought that in the mind of Benedict XVI, when he drew up the proposed model on which to base eventual reunion between East and West, that the ancient date of Easter would be the one that would bind us together yet again. Be that as it may, the finger of God is not forced by man, and it is on the Eastern date right now, today, within an hour or two, that this miracle will happen, at the very spot where the miracle of miracles happened at one point in time and geography. We know that the argument around the filioque, which eventually led, partly through political pressure, to a division between East and West in 1054, initially was not thought to be what it was going to be. Arguments, as we would say, bust-ups, were not infrequent in the Middle Ages, and this one would come and go like the others, it was thought. But it was not to be. Now, in that period, we know that there was this impetus from a non-Christian force to remove the problem that the Holy Sepulchre presented for the Muslim world. And so there was pressure from on high, from Muslim authority, to demolish not only other sites precious to Christians, but this one in particular, where they knew that something happened on this day. Hence it is that we only now have a fragment of what was there originally. The Holy Sepulchre is badly damaged. In the same way, the rock that the Lord used to perform the anticipation of the miracle of the Eucharist, in a sense, that way he multiplied food, 5 loaves and 2 fishes, that was also badly damaged. There is only a fragment remaining. One can actually still just about celebrate on it. It is in the hands of the Benedictines, German Benedictines, near the Sea of Tiberias. And so it was that they were keen on removing this incitement to Muslims to become Christians, which was the annual miracle, to Hagios, the Holy Light. And what better way of doing it than removing the spot where it happened? And so we know the reaction. It was only at that point that the Christians took to arms. It was eventually the beginning of the Crusades. Eventually, the Christians did overrun Jerusalem, but unfortunately we know the way in which it was done, and the Lord could not sanction bloodshed out of order. And we have this interesting testimony. It is from the Armenian historian Matthew. He was a priest, and he was born in Edessa, in Syria, in the second half of the 11th century. His chronicle was completed around 1136 and is considered a highly valuable source for the medieval history of the Middle East. The work is preserved in many manuscripts, and an Armenian edition was first published in 1869. So we have here an English translation. In the year 550 of the Armenian era, now that corresponds to 1101 to 1102, a frightful and wondrous omen appeared in the holy city of Jerusalem. The light, which usually burned over the holy sepulchre of Christ our God, went out, and would not burn on Holy Saturday. The lamps would not burn until Sunday, becoming lighted at the 9th hour of that day. All the Christians were amazed by this phenomenon. Now, all this occurred because the Frankish nation had strayed into the path of evil and had abandoned the true and righteous way, partaking of the cup of sin, which is filled with bitter dregs. Those that ministered in the Holy Church wallowed in the mire of sin, that is, unsatiated. Moreover, in the midst of all this evil behavior, they did not shrink from committing any sin. Worse still, they appointed women to serve at the holy sepulchre of God and in all the monasteries located in Jerusalem. All these were very great sins in the eyes of God. These Franks went so far as to expel the Armenians, Romans. Now, by the way, I think Romans there would correspond to what we would say Greeks. There's a historic reason for that, but I think if you look into that, that's what it actually means. Syrians and Georgians from all the monasteries. Now, when the Franks saw this frightful omen, which was a sign of God's reproach to their nation, they removed the women serving in the monasteries of Jerusalem and restored all the nations to their respective monasteries. After this, the 5 nations of Christian faithful began to pray, and God heard their prayers. So, on the Sunday of Easter, the lamp over the holy sepulchre of God lighted up. No one had ever seen this happen before, for the light of the holy sepulchre had always begun to burn on Saturday at the 11th hour of the day. That is, right now, or soon. It's a bit elastic, but it's about to happen. We're in real time, and at this point, Earth is touching heaven. The miracle now, for many centuries, happens at the very spot where the Lord was laid, and therefore not visible unto all. In early centuries it was different. There was a point in history when the process of encountering the risen Lord was changed liturgically at that point of the world, and where the patriarch would actually go in on his own into the inner chamber. For many centuries it was a different rite. what is constant is the miraculous lighting. Now, when he is on his own, and the Armenian Patriarch is in the antechamber, but he can see, we know exactly what happens, and it is very touching. There is a light seen within the tomb, and out it comes through that chink which one can see, and it dances around the inner chamber, usually of blue, but it can be of different hues, and eventually it settles into a column from which he can light his 33 candles. At that point, God and man are touching, rather as in the fresco of Michelangelo at the creation of man, voltage coming from the finger of God. And at the same time, that holy light is also lighting various candles in the Holy Sepulchre itself, outside in the general church, notably of Catharais, souls that are pure and clean, virgin souls, nuns and monks especially. They have it happening at the same time, by the same finger of God. And for the first minutes, at least 7 minutes, it is a miraculous fire which does not burn the beard or the skin. And this then is the fire that will eventually go around the world. It is interesting that it will come here to Dublin, because we have friends who would be interested in getting the Holy Light there in the place where it's celebrated in the Eastern Rite in Dublin. But it would also go to the main points of Christianity throughout the Eastern Church. And one important one is Moscow. It comes through a designated airline, and it will reach the cathedral of the Patriarch of Moscow, who will present it to the head of state, Vladimir Putin, who will be part of the exaltation in which, for hours and hours, the Eastern Church, in its own exuberant right, will praise the glorious King. We need to learn something of that exaltation. Unfortunately, many of our churches, disobey the rules of liturgy itself in anticipating the vigil to a moment of broad daylight, keeping the same hour of the anticipated Sunday Mass of a Saturday, and therefore having to have sometimes a very short celebration, because the priest might have more than one vigil to keep. He has more churches on his hands than before, and so we have this going on. And we do not realize that this demands time. Right now, the fundamental question asked with regard to any liturgical practice in many of our Western situations is, how long will this take? If that is our mentality, then we are depriving ourselves of the fullness of grace, the explosion of joy, the long and deep blessing that the Lord has prepared for us on this night when the whole world, east and west, is waiting for the finger of God. Alas, alas, time has become too measured in the West, and we need to go back to Jerusalem and to the centuries of waiting to see what time really is. Time is quality. Time is not made of seconds. Time is made of engagement between man and God can work more powerfully when we do not measure off his ignition with the fingers of a clock.
Holy Saturday. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, this morn we sing the chant of thy long yesterday, and act in corners four the drama born by ages dimmed. For 'tis the orient ray that moved Prémontré's dawn, and fossiled bars bear music from afar, nay, from the tomb of every tomb to come, wherein the stars at noon again this day will pierce earth's gloom. This is the noontide, where the fire unlit shall come again without the help of man, and ancient might, too bright for human wit, will calmly strike this wick as no craft can. For 'tis the ray that blasted Turin's face, that toys with timely sparks from outer space.
After hearing of the latest reports from Turin, what happened on the night that left this mark upon the unmarked columns of a page of shelved, unfiled, locked science? What strange spark that starred beyond dimensions of our age did wander from beyond's own land and walk into our time? What did it do in this its ancient mischief? Do we stand beside an imprint of a world, but passing through? Our wizards say that all-thing force, a second split to atoms, must have come our sleepy way, that 'twas the intercourse of utmost inner night that left this numb. And yet, unshred, neath tearing of a pain so huge that, were it known, 'twould worlds explain. Honey.